Welcome back, Reg audience. For the last time in 2014, we've had a lot of fun this year, and so we're going to finish off on 21st century data protection because that's going to be it's just a nice way to finish it off. It's something that you want to work out, and it's going to take a lot of planning, so it's good that you'll have the Christmas break to think about it. That's why we do it. That's why we do it. Give you a lot of time to think about it. You know, it gets boring, the repeated films over Christmas. So think about data protection instead. Why are we doing this today? Well, the reason is because your data protection regime, you're telling us, has slipped behind. You know, it's a poor relation. Sometimes people don't want to think about it. It's complicated. It's getting more complicated. It needs investment. It's also very important. And so we've got some people in the studio today who are going to help you bring it up to date, bring it into the 21st century. Who is in the studio today to help us? Well, Dr. Dave, welcome to the Reg studio from HP. Now, it's your first time in the studio, and tell us what you do at HP.
It is indeed. I've been at HP 6 years now, and mainly focused on managing pre-sales people. For the last year, I've been managing a team, an EMEA-wide team, focused on promoting Bura, backup recovery and archive solutions.
Do we call it Bura now? Is this kind of like an official generic title for this sort of thing?
Yeah, sorry. I mean, that's the.
That's all right. You know, it's good because it makes it quicker.
Yeah,
for us.
It's what we're calling it within HP.
Yeah.
But basically, it's everything outside of the primary storage volumes that are presented to the application.
Yeah, now
absolutely everything.
Good. I call you Dr. Dave because for the first time I'm in the studio with two people with PhDs, and yours was in
applied maths.
Lovely. What was the title of your thesis?
It was a study of the micromechanics of granular media. Very interesting.
Good, we'll have you back another time.
It's been read at least 5 times.
Talk about that in more detail.
Subsequent research students.
And joining you today is Dr. Tony, Dr. Stats, really, actually, yes. Our other PhD in the studio. Now, this storage is, again, this is something that you like to talk about.
Yes, it's something that crops up in almost all of the webcasts that we've done on almost every subject.
You try and squeeze it in when it's not the subject.
Absolutely. How do you protect what you've got?
So we're giving you a full hour to let loose in the studio. Title of your thesis?
It was to do with far infrared astronomy objects. It's looked at by a satellite called IRAS way back in the mists of time.
So at some point.
Applied mathematics again.
At some point again, we will get you maths guys to come in and tell us what you know. And then, of course, there's me. So now, remember, Reg audience, do ask your questions today about this. We've got a lot of practical information, and this is something where there are a lot of decisions to make, a lot of moving parts. If you want to know more about something we're saying, we haven't made anything clear, ask us. It comes out on a little screen here, and I ask these guys. So, yeah, and actually, we've got a question straight away. Martin says, here's the thing, I'm moving everything to the cloud anyway. Doesn't this become somebody else's problem? SEP. So, yeah, Tony.
I would argue that protecting your data is never somebody else's problem.
It's in the cloud.
Even Douglas Adams wouldn't do that. You've got to make sure that your cloud vendor is actually protecting it appropriately. And what do you do if maybe you have a fallout with your cloud vendor or the cloud vendor disappears overnight? Okay, some cloud vendors are less likely for that to happen to than others, but do you still want to make sure that you've got hold of your data if your business really requires it?
Yeah.
I would have thought so.
Doesn't the cloud put you out of business, Dr. Dave?
No, because somewhere that data has to live, and it has to live on equipment, and hopefully that'll be HP equipment out there, using technologies to manage it just the same.
It might be. I'm usually like the HP stuff, might not be. Right, okay, let's see.
We've had some good examples of people putting all of their things into the cloud and then something happens to the cloud and they can't recover it all. Or they can recover. There was a famous case a few years ago, and the big photo library had a problem. They recovered all the pictures, but all of the metadata, so you can actually find your pictures, was gone. So, you know, some poor photographer spent, you know, weeks and months just recataloguing everything.
I would hate that. Well, everyone would hate that job.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got to be careful. Not all clouds are equal.
Right. Okay. So, yes, so your answer to you, Martin, is it doesn't solve your problem, unfortunately.
Yeah. The responsibility is still yours.
Okay. Let's have a look at what that responsibility is and why we're talking about this now. So the problem, let's have a look at this first diagram. We're starting off with a cracker of a complicated diagram, Dr. Dave. But yeah.
We did.
Yeah, but what are we saying here? We're saying that there's lots of things have changed.
Well, the graphic itself is portraying complexity. It's saying, you know,
does that well.
It's what it's supposed to do. We've got a lot of infrastructure, you know, located in data centers, but we've also got lots of information and applications running out at remote offices and branch offices. So the problem's large. The problem is ever changing. And that's why it's titled, you know, changes in the next 3 years, because in the next 3 years, new apps are going to come online, data's going to grow, equipment's going to get old, you know, we're going to acquire a new company, or we're going to, you know, change what we're doing. So it's an ever evolving thing, but generally it evolves in the upward direction, so that, you know, we can be guaranteed that data will continue to grow.
Mm-hmm. And is there something about this, Tony, that says that the changes in the next 3 years are going to break the sort of data protection we have now?
Well, despite everything we've done to try and simplify the IT infrastructure over the last few years in terms of consolidating servers and progressively storage, that complexity is still going up. Because of the application spread. We're getting more and more applications, not fewer and fewer. The whole way the applications link together and the data is used, it's no longer that you've got a single application sitting on a single server with the middleware underneath it and the data underneath that. Now you've got applications that may be pulling in data from lots of different sources, and you need to protect all of that coherently. So everything's rising here, except for one issue, and that's the expectation of the users to be able to get their information as quickly as possible. And that means that in the case of trying to recover information because of a problem somewhere or a corruption and need to recover a file, get a new system back up and running, the expectation of users is now that we don't wait for 2, 3, 4 days to get that back. It happens, you know, quickly. So that's the one bit that's, you know, plummeting down, not going up.
Explain a little bit about that thing where you're saying that the different applications take their, you know, join the data together.
One of the things we had on the earlier slide is that today data protection pretty much runs in silos.
Yeah.
We back up an individual set of data. Whereas now, where you've got data potentially spread across multiple different systems, how do you make sure that the data that you recover is all self-consistent within the application, so that it sees data as it should be, rather than half a transaction's processed here but not there? How do you make sure that you can recover to a stable state that tells the way things are, not, you know, some corrupted version of it? Keeping that consistency in recovery is getting more and more difficult. Once
you start thinking about this, it's very tempting to stop, isn't it, Dave? You know, I mean, very quickly, because you very quickly run into problems that you're thinking, I'm not sure exactly how we sort this one out.
I agree. So there needs to be a logical approach to it all, but fortunately technology is coming to the rescue as well. So new technology is coming to market all the time, new ways, new efficiencies in doing things, and overall we're kind of hoping as vendors to bring propositions to customers that are kind of based on the you know, doing more for less. So more efficiency and really focusing on complication and trying to simplify things, especially the management, because the management in itself is extremely costly. And to be managing lots of silos of data, lots of different devices, and lots of you know, changes in the environment, equate to a lot of money spent every year.
Right, and that's where we're going today, isn't it? So first of all, we'll just have a look at what the users are telling us, Dr. Stats.
What the audience have told us time after time. The important point on this one are really, well, there's two important points. The one in the middle about service level shortfalls. You know, that applies to some primary storage, but particularly, as we just discussed, about backup and recovery, i.e. recovering data when you need it as quickly as possible. And that's reflected in the bottom one here, lengthy time to recovery. As you can see, you know, the number of people saying that it's a significant problem or at least an ongoing distraction. And this was in a general storage survey, not a backup in particular survey, is well over 20%, nearly a quarter of the audience, 25%. It's something that's acknowledged out there, but maybe subconsciously, because, as Dave said earlier, data protection has been sort of, you know, behind everything else. It's all been about primary service. Data protection has just kept on going the way it has kept on going because that's what we've done. That doesn't quite fit now with the needs of the business, particularly with those changing service level requirements.
Let's have a look. Normally, when you produce a slide for me,
you tell me to simplify.
I tell you to simplify, but I let you have all of your bars this time round, because there's a good reason, isn't there?
There is, yeah. This is a survey that we actually ran, asking mid-sized and small businesses in particular, you know, what were their experience of using different types of data protection solutions. And as you can see, you know, traditional file-based backup and recovery was top of the list. You know, nearly everybody has done that, and most people use it either satisfactorily or, as you can see, use it with some doubts or issues. And anybody who does backup to tape knows exactly what I'm talking about. When we move down though to the more recent data protection solutions that have become available in the last 4 or 5 years, you know, even things like replication, which we all sort of assume everybody knows about, continuous data protection, hosted or cloud-based backup, things like this, the amount of usage of them is much, much lower. And the number of people who either don't know, doubt about this, very, very high. So people haven't been able to keep up with the changing sophistication of data protection solutions that are available, even in large enterprises. Large enterprises, the numbers are further to the right because they've got more time and money to do this stuff and more specialists to do it. But most people just don't understand what's available for them today.
The fragmentation is a thing in itself, a problem in itself, isn't it, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, there's 12 individual solutions mentioned there. And it's very possible that a medium-sized company, you know, we could find a need to deploy all 12. You know, that it would improve. I'm sure, in theory, it would appear to improve the overall data protection by using those different technologies. But what we'd be doing by deploying them is raising the complexity.
Well, you have a bit here and a bit there and a bit here, and over here we do this, and over there it's that. And is this one protecting that, or is it that one? Yeah.
And the management overhead, you know, for the register audience out there goes through the roof because you've got to look after all of these separate solutions.
Yes, which is made more complicated by the fact that quite a few people don't actually know what they are.
Well, when we were asking the previous question, we also started counting how many people said, "What do you mean by?" And you can see, okay, everybody, no one asked what we meant by traditional file-based backup.
That's good news. That's a bit of good news.
So we've all got that one spot on. But even image-based backup, there were 1 or 2 there. But as we move down into these, you know, more recent solutions, the number of people are saying, exactly what do you mean? Gets to be very, very high. You know, even in terms of, you know, continuous data protection and replications, they're all here. People do not have that knowledge of what's available. It really is reflected very clearly in this. They haven't had time to find out what to do. Too busy keeping everything running. Too busy keeping the backup and recovery systems we've got running as well. Part of that problem. If you want to know what
any of those things are, then please send in a question and ask us. Because we've got the guys in the studio here who can explain it. Not all 12, because we only have 45 minutes left. But yes, there are some. I mean, it is a problem, isn't it, Dave, that we can't start thinking about how to cope with this strategically if whole bits of the strategy are a mystery.
Correct. And what's tempting is to deploy one of these based on the need of a certain application, but it doesn't apply to everything else. And we've just now increased the overall complexity, and on it goes.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So, next one. You have some very busy bars here.
Yeah, indeed. But this one is really key to everything. So, do you actually have any concerns about these systems that we've been talking about? And even traditional file-based backup and restore, you can see that there's well over 40% there saying it's either impractical for us or ineffective for our requirements. As we move down through the charts, these two issues are there for everything. Overkill for us as well. You know, some smaller and mid-sized businesses think, well, great, wonderful, but not for us. They're too big, they're too complicated, they're too expensive for us to use. So the understanding of just, you know, can we do this? Would it work for us? Could we look after it when it's implemented? Lots of need to understand, well, can we actually do this?
I know,
it's fundamental.
It's back in the real world, Dave. You understand how this works, but it is amazing. Everyone's doing the traditional file-based backup and restore, but we've got half of the people that say it's either not practical or it just doesn't work for them. You know, it doesn't match what they need.
I'm really not surprised about that, because if you look back in time, you know, backup's been around longer than storage area networks, for instance. You know, and so we've modernized. It's like in this country we could modernize the road system, and we did, and we put in a motorway system, and yet people are still using the A roads. You know, it would be that kind of analogy. And I think you know, in the late 90s we put in very fast storage networks into the data center, yet we're not using them very efficiently in backup terms.
Yeah.
Basically, it's the problem of insurance. Most companies see backup and recovery as insurance.
Yes.
And therefore, it's essentially been underinvested in, because until you actually need to recover something quickly and find out you've got a problem, then everyone expects that it's working. But you know, the audience out there knows that it probably isn't.
Now, one of the there are a lot of pictures from the some of the cloud vendors to say, and this goes back to the Martin's original question, which said, and sort of Gordon sending the question as well, talking about that. Is it practical to start working towards this hosted cloud-based backup as how would you say, as a first point of let's try and fix something quickly tactically, we'll start sending stuff to the cloud?
It's certainly getting more and more popular, and for good reason. And that is because you don't have the complexity as your problem any longer.
You don't have to think about
Correct.
it, yes.
However, recovering critical applications, I don't think that would be possible with the networking, you know, to the cloud we've got today.
It's not. We just don't have the speeds.
No. You can't move the data quickly enough.
We don't have the
So
infrastructure.
if you wanted to recover back to on-site, that's maybe an issue. If you wanted to recover to the same cloud site, you know, to run things there temporarily and then trickle feed things back locally once you've got a reprovision system in place, maybe. But again, it's horses for courses. Understanding what are your needs, what can you do, what are the options.
So a major constraint here to think about is the infrastructure, the sort of infrastructure, the networking infrastructure you've got outside your firewall. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Just deal with that as the problem. Now, so we've had a kind of like we always have that little sad time at the beginning when we all say, look at the problems people are having, so let's try and build things back up again. There are options, new options now, Dave. Take us through some highlights from this.
Okay, so we're kind of looking at saying there's things happening in technology, so we've got more options available to us to get the protection done. In particular, over recent years, storage arrays have become very feature-rich. Many of those features have been to do with availability and protection. So arrays can now take snapshots very efficiently. They can move those snapshots, you know, between arrays via, you know, asynchronous replication, and there's so therefore the backup can start within the array itself. Okay, so we're looking at all those capabilities, but you know, all of these things that are happening in that space are treating the protection from a storage perspective. There's no analysis of what data's being backed up, what the value of that data is. You know, has that data changed in the last, you know, 6 months? Does it need to be backed up again? You know, so actually,
so just because you can doesn't mean that you actually should. You should start looking at being a little
correct.
bit more
So we need to
economical.
start looking into the value of the data, you know, as far as the backup plans are concerned. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. Perhaps we should analyse data and put it into 3 categories. You know, 1, mission critical, primary. 2nd, of business value but not critical, which possibly shouldn't even be in the fast primary arrays, and a third category which we could define as rot, redundant, obsolete or trivial. And that data really needs to leave the primary system and leave the backup system, perhaps being archived off onto tape, the lowest cost option, and put in a secure place and left there.
Because if you don't get it back for 4 hours, nobody cares.
Correct.
Everybody's happy.
The business would keep running for definite. And you can identify that sort of data quite easily.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. How many times do you back up a single item? You might have, in the traditional methods, daily backups, and then an end of week backup. So incremental daily is an end of week backup, then a monthly backup and a 6 monthly and whatever. So you could end up, one of my colleagues did some calculations. You could easily end up with 240 copies of the same file that hasn't changed.
So if the volume of data expands exponentially, then this is
the backup protection volume goes even faster.
Yeah.
Yeah. If typically you could take out 30% of data as being not needed, but we're going to keep it anyway on tape. That's 30% forever, so that's, it's a true 30%.
So you save on primary costs, you save on protection costs, you save on risk, time, everything, money.
You're backing up less, you're recovering less.
So that's, so this is basically...
Everything's getting more efficient.
So what we're going to be doing in the rest of our sort of time today, really, is we're going to build up some way in which people can think practically about what to do about this and build a case for this. Talk about the technology. Yeah,
the technology. So, for instance, I was saying that backup architectures tend to be very old now, often LAN-based technologies where agents are running on servers, being the interface between application and the storage, and then third parties moving the data from one device to another. That's very inefficient. It would be much smarter if you could send data directly between storage devices, so between the primary storage and the secondary backup storage, direct. And that would cut out a lot of inefficiency. Okay, that hasn't been done so far today, but just recently there's been announcements in that space. And this is a very logical thing to do. And you know what? When you look at how the features on storage arrays have been growing, they're now extremely powerful storage operating systems, well capable of transmitting snapshots between different devices. Okay, that's such a small amount of data traveling to synthetically create a full backup at the target. Very, very efficient.
Yeah, and the final point, basically, that we've covered a little bit already, this idea of the silos, that different things are applied in different places.
Silos always a bad thing, because basically they're segregating resources, they're stopping one application getting access to the free resources on another platform. But in the backup world, it's about that consolidation of management. Too many different devices having to be managed by different systems.
But that means you have to be a little bit nasty cop about this and say, if people are starting to, if you've got teams implement some application somewhere or other, you have to sort of take off the borough part of it.
And it's not just, eliminating the management overhead and reducing the amount of effort you've got to put into making this stuff work in the first place. It's also reducing the risk, because at the moment those silos mean that you can have those inconsistencies. If you've got a composite application, you might recover, a large part of it using one tool and not realize that there's some data that you need to recover as well using another tool because it's backed up from a different system, and then getting all of that in sync again. So the recovery may not work in the first place, so it's limiting the risk as well.
Okay, well, let's have a look at this. So you can tell we've got a couple of mathematicians in the studio. Not only do we have continuum in the title, but I think that's a double logarithmic scale, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
Good stuff. I'll just call it a blob chart. What are the blobs, Dave?
Well, they're basically displaying in terms of the speed and the cost, of course, how they're related, different kind of backup or protection technologies we have access to, right from the storage array all through the different media types down to tape. The one interesting thing about this is that this I could have, or we could have shown this diagram 10 years ago and it would have been similar, as long as we hadn't put any actual numbers on the scaling.
Yeah,
it would have looked similar. What's happening in here is that within the various ellipses here, there's advances going on continuously, and not just following Moore's law. There's some invention going on, particularly in that disk backup space, to make disk much more attractive these days.
Do the overlaps get bigger between the blobs?
Yes, to some degree.
Yeah, you're nodding totally.
No, yeah, absolutely. And the developments are occurring all across, all of these blobs. Tape isn't just standing still; that's moving over as well. So that the recovery might be days for some old tape, but for some new tape and some big tape arrays, could be still minutes, seconds. So there's developments everywhere. The overlaps are getting bigger, which means that you've got to do some decision making about, well, maybe 2 or 3 of these solutions might fit your needs. Which one is best for us in the grander scheme of things? So it's that big picture understanding. What's
really cool though is we're working on integrating these solutions so that you're driving them out of a single management console, and you're using them appropriately, often in an automated fashion.
I was going to say, now, does it come the case where you still have to make decisions about exactly how you are going to
For instance,
protect your data?
A modern storage array can take an application-aware snapshot, just like that, super efficient. But of course, it's residing on the box where it's actually got its primary data. That's not really a backup, is it? It's a recovery point, but I need to get that copied off somewhere. The mechanisms to do that can automate the movement of that data between the different medias and appliances.
Yeah. The important point is not only are the technologies evolving, but you don't want them to be siloed still. You want to have some way of managing them so that the guys out there can actually do this without needing ever-expanding numbers of people to do it.
Now, we're coming to half-time. In the second half, we'll be talking about some more specific use cases. Actually, we're going on to that in a minute about how we break that down. If you've got any questions about that, if you're faced with something and you really don't know how to what to do about it, how to take step 1, let us know. A couple of good questions so far, so please shout out. So what we're going to look at is how you classify your data, the need, the business process that you need to build around it in this second half. Now, there is the problem, isn't there, Dave, that as soon as you start thinking about this, the list of things to think about gets quite long. You can see why people really don't want to get involved with this.
It's daunting.
Yes.
No doubt about it. It's also, if you were to lay out, the perfect way or a really super, updated way of doing this, it would cost too much to move to it. So it has to be
there's always
evolving,
a trade-off. Yeah.
Yes, it does. So it's about identifying where the money's being spent and where the SLAs are under threat. And those are ever increasing. I mean, the user community are getting used to much better, more reliable service from applications. These days the primary storage is moving towards all flash arrays. Very, very fast.
We had your colleagues in the studio
responsive.
Just a couple of weeks ago talking about that.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Very fast, very responsive. The user of these applications is going to expect them to be available at all times, and to be reliable. So
looking at this, looking at the complexity, first of all, there has to be an answer to how you're protecting stuff, whatever it is. There has to be some completely thought through idea about how that data is being protected.
Yes.
Yeah, we have. There is, not least because we've got legislation coming up that's going to make sure that you've got an answer.
And that also applies in the retention needs box. The fact that you can keep a tape forever.
Yeah.
I've got backup tapes under my bed at home, you know, traditional way of keeping backup tapes. Safe off-site
Whatever
storage.
you do in your own bedroom is up to you.
But the point is that those backup tapes there have probably got data on that I should have deleted some time ago because of legal requirements.
Mm-hmm. So it's also, it's not just how much you keep,
not just how long you keep
yeah.
it for, and do you have to get rid of it at the end? You've got business retention needs, you've got legal retention requirements. The two are often not the same.
I don't think there's anyone in our audience that isn't breaking the rules there.
I'm reasonably confident of that too.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about where you're protecting it, because, for example, if you go off-site, then the network speeds are going to be a constraint if it's a large volume of data.
For certain, for critical data,
for certain
certainly,
yeah. The recovery needs, we often talk about when it's disaster recovery, we often talk about people wait for a disaster before they start thinking about disaster recovery. You're saying that SLA is under threat. If increasingly we have this complexity and people are seeing that they have experienced these too long time to recovery, then you've got some data on this. You've got a data point that we know that 4 hours is too long. We can think is
absolutely
30 minutes going to be too long, or is 15 minutes going to be too long?
The other thing is, on your recovery, do you actually know how long it takes you to recover? You might have a theoretical one, but have you tried to do it as a test?
No.
To see whether you can meet the needs.
Has anyone in the audience actually ever tested and come out with a good result from their test? That's what I'd like to know. Please let me know. If you have, then we'll read out. Then we'll give you.
I think some people will.
You think?
Have done. Yes, I do, because it's really important thing to do is to test your recovery capabilities.
It's a sort of self-selecting group, isn't it? The people who are likely to test are the ones that are likely to be sufficiently.
But it's like all things. When you're under pressure, that one doesn't get noticed if it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Until
it doesn't
there's a
happen.
problem.
Mm-hmm. So what's this? Can you extract value from it? Bit in the insight.
Well, this is a really interesting thing, because ultimately, it's if we've got a copy of data, then it's sitting there as an insurance policy. Mm-hmm. But wouldn't it be cool if we could actually use that copy in order to extract information? Because there's information in there. Well, it contains all the files, databases, whatever we've been backing up. We could be analysing that as an archive.
Okay.
So really, what we're going to see, I believe, is that we will merge archives and backup together. Now, you can obviously have archives today, and that means moving data into a repository that is very easy to make inquiries on, so that you can search it very, very easily. Mm-hmm. But that's a separate system today to a backup system.
Right.
I believe they will merge in the future.
But backups are structured differently to archives. Are they not?
Well, they don't necessarily.
They don't have to be now. Got it. Yeah.
As we move forward.
There's been some work on this already.
Yeah.
But the important point here is that the register audience have told us in surveys about getting the most from the information that we hold. We're not doing a good job of it. We know we've got data, we can't find it. Clearly an archive would help with that. What we do know is that today the majority of archives are really archives for legal compliance, not for business value generation. Mm-hmm. If you turn the archive into something that's got just one copy of everything rather than 57 copies, that has everything in there that you can find and search, then you can begin to look at the value side of things. You've got the governance on it, so what can we actually do with the value extraction? But just finding it in the first place is the important part. So having an archive for everything, not just the stuff that legally we have to archive, would make a huge difference to that.
So the goal here is so you get the value from archiving, you get the compliance.
Kill two birds with one stone.
But you also get it rolled into your backup strategy if you can merge the three.
It kind of adds value, benefits that are not just insurance. Mm-hmm. But backup's always been about an insurance policy. Yeah. The rainy day scenarios, how do I get around them quickly and effectively? This would bring another angle where we could mine that stored data for information. Mm-hmm. So that's quite exciting.
If you are backing up everything, then you should know all of the data that you've got. So in your archive, you know what's in there. You can find it.
Yeah, in Tony World, Yeah.
In an ideal world, yeah. It's not quite as easy as that, but it's going to happen. But the question is, how quickly can you make it happen? Have you got a business case to bring that forward?
And finally, yes, talking about sort of business case, finally the investment. I guess you pay to do it badly or you pay to do it well.
Of course.
It costs money to do stuff that doesn't work as well because there's still a process going on.
Of course. So if you've got a kind of plan of how you want to modernise, you know, the backup landscape, then perhaps you can work that in at times tactically, like, for instance, equipment coming to end of life. Yeah. You know, that plan will affect what you buy to replace that ageing equipment.
Let's have a look at this. Now, there's one stat just on this, because we're talking about the business case now. What's this 5% of data's not backed up?
Okay, well, that's a value that we found in practice. One of the things that HP offers is a certain solution comes with a guarantee of effectiveness. Right. But in order to make that guarantee, we have to do a study on the customer's site. It's a free study that basically analyses their current backup situation. And what this has revealed is that 5% of data is not getting backed up, and this is important data. This is, this is stuff that the customer generally thought should be protected.
It's not that rot stuff you were talking about.
No,
it's
it isn't.
The real,
correct. No, because the rot is intermingled, and we can't separate that, or in most customers don't separate that. No, this is actual application data or file data that the customer thought they were backing up, but actually were not. Whether there was errors in the backup schedules, or whether they put up new virtual machines which hadn't been configured into the backup. But whatever it was, it reveals an alarming 5%.
You just hope that it's not that 5%.
Yeah, and it shocks the customer when they see this.
We've actually got a slide
didn't expect to see it.
We've got a slide from the register audience a bit later that very much backs that up. The other thing is there are archetypal stories out there of, we've just developed a new system, and when we've put it into production, a bit of it's actually still running on the test system, so the data going there isn't getting backed up, guys. It happens.
I mean, I suppose a good first step for people coming off the back of this, if made them think again, is to just go and have another look and to just check which backups maybe have been stopped, to have a look and see, like you say, with virtual machines, if they're automatically being backed up.
Process.
And that's something, try and find their 5% for themselves. Yeah. Otherwise, you'll come in and help them do it, will you? Well,
this is it. The Get Protected guarantee that HP offer, it gives a reason to go and produce a document showing what's going on.
So just looking at this is a sort of a converged backup idea on this. I suppose we don't need to spend too much time on this, but how does this all fit together then, Dave?
Well, it's basically just highlighting at a very high level what we're trying to achieve. So speed's of the essence. Everything's going faster. Backup needs to go faster too. We're looking at efficiency. Efficiency is often brought about by the reduction of complexity, but there's also technical efficiency. For instance, over the last 5 years, disk deduplication of data stored on disk has made it a very effective media to store it on, because I'm not storing anything twice.
Yes.
And that makes it cost effective, whereas if I was saving multiple copies on the disk, it would be ineffective. It would be too expensive. Simplicity, always with an eye on reducing unnecessary tasks, whether that be through automation of functions, or just simply in consolidation of the various systems. And of course, always with the eye on reliability. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, we're not losing sight through efficiencies of actually getting the job done.
Of actually doing it. If you don't do that, then
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. Because I wanted to get on to this, because this is an interest. This is as you were talking about, this is this is the sort of the architecture of how it's done. Now, we got your product names on it, but I mean, with or without the product names, you can explain how this works.
Indeed. Basically, what we're trying to show here is that getting data from primary to secondary and managing that process can be done in lots of ways. There is a primary to primary type of or a disk array to disk array solution that's possible. You know, we can create application-aware snapshots on one primary array, and we can copy that to another. So that's on the left side here. On the right side, we're moving to a disk-based deduplication appliance, which is very efficient, typically about 20 to 1. So 20 backups occupying the space of just one backup at the backup appliance, and that then being capable of replicating that on to another location, or vice versa. In the case of, say, a remote office or a branch office, being able to take the local backups in a very efficient way and then transmitting only the changes back to the data centers, or DR center for that extra protection, and the offloading of a lot of those datas to tape. So the complete picture. Now, if we look at the blue lines in the middle,
I was going to say, because we've got a blue line coming across here.
Exactly. So traditionally, that's been done by an ISV, an independent software vendor, the backup provider, if you like, and they've utilised separate hardware, whether it's a backup server or a media server, in order to make that movement of data from primary to secondary. There's a new option now available from HP, which takes the data directly from the primary to the backup. That's super efficient. That will show increase in speeds of 17 times. And that's not exaggerating, because we can effectively send a snapshot to the backup device. So a block level snapshot from the array, which will be super small and super quick to generate, transmit that across fast networking to the storage device, and it will assimilate that back into equivalent to a full backup, massively fast.
So what we're coming out with on this, Tony, is that we're not looking at improvements in performance of a couple of % here and there.
No.
If you think about this in a new way, in a constructive way, then you can increase your performance if that is important to you.
Absolutely.
Enormously.
It's a question of identifying your needs at heart. And if you have changing needs, and almost everybody out there has, then there really are things you can do about it to make significant differences, both in the completeness, ease and recovery time.
Now, you've got some stats on how good at the moment the Reg audience is at this, and again, we've got small dark blue bars.
Yeah, we've also got that 5% of we know we're not backing up stuff in terms of reliability of data recovery.
Yeah.
All the way through here, so we're doing a reasonably okay job on data recovery and actually getting stuff back, but we're certainly not doing a great job on getting it back quickly enough. The number of dark blue bars here for speed of recovery, very, very small. Completeness of protection, we can see we've got lots missing. All the way down to, can we just recover bits of information rather than complete systems? Is that tricky or easy? For a lot of people, it's still a problem, a challenge. Ease of operation, see, dark blue, medium-sized blue, almost non-existent. It really is difficult to manage this stuff. And right at the bottom, the stuff that we just touched on earlier, ease of testing and making sure that we can actually get stuff back, before we need to get it back. Almost nobody thinks that they can do a good job on this. And that, of course, leaves you exposed, because if you haven't tested it, do you know that it's going to work?
Well, you don't really want to test if you think that it might not work.
I suspect you'd rather test it before you had to do it to find out if it's working or not.
I just hope your successor does it. But yes, do these statistics surprise you, Dave? They're about what you come into contact with?
They surprised me, actually, because I would have thought there would have been more customers fairly confident, you know, that they had put a lot of attention on this, because ultimately, you know, lose this data and there's serious consequences.
Yes.
But that's the point. The business really doesn't appreciate the need for good data protection because they think it's happening.
They assume that it's happening, which would perhaps explain why that not so many people are reviewing the requirements on this.
Well, yeah, there's still quite a few that are reviewing them.
Yes.
And even more saying, we're not, but we should be.
But we know we should.
So if you look at the we're not, but we should be, or we are reviewing it, you can see in all cases, you know, whether it's speed, reliability, completeness, ease of testing, we know we should be doing something about this, guys. And because of those business pressures have been ramping up and ramping up and ramping up, it's almost reached a tipping point where we've got to do something before we have, you know, the proverbial disaster where we can't recover.
You see, now I was joking at the beginning and to say, well, because it's over Christmas, you've got time to have a think about this. One of the problems, though, I saw in some research from CIOs last week, the idea that they love to be able to do these sort of things, but it's always that keeping the lights on type stuff. And what we've presented here is quite a large programme of improvement, haven't we, Dave? Is it possible to pick this off piece by piece?
I think it probably is, starting with the most mission critical data, and then, you know, basically making plans to categorise everything as to what service levels and what priorities you know you place on that information.
That really ties in with this, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, you all know that you've got to do something about this. You've told us that, but are there any budget restraints or anything else that's stopping you doing this? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
Senior budget holders do not appreciate the need to invest. And this was about generic storage, but in terms of backup and recovery in particular, I suspect if we asked about that, then the blue bars would be even
more of them don't
bigger.
think that it's a
because,
problem.
Because that's the thing. Until it goes wrong, it's really hard to get people to pay to do something about it proactively. It's that insurance. We don't want to do insurance. This is the one insurance you really do want to do. And if you can get the extra value from it by actually extracting more information, maybe that's another way of making the business case.
One of the things that we've got there is somewhere you could possibly make a quick win, which is the budgets being too siloed, that they're being attached to probably individual applications, individual departments.
So when you're looking at the particular need, bear in mind that can we put in some protection here that we can expand as more budget becomes available to grow.
The scary thing is that if it's like an old car, you know, there's major works necessary on it to keep it running, and it's almost like throwing good money on bad. The same can apply here, and you know, new things are coming into the infrastructure. Like I say, an example would be the all-flash array. You know, extremely popular, going to be a big thing, but it's going to place strain on the existing backup. No doubt about it. And so it should be reviewed at that time, you know, whether the apps that are going to live on these devices, are they going to be adequately protected?
Yeah. So let's have a look at you world architecture. That's you know, that's quite a grand claim. Now, yes, looking at this from the point of view of the architectural requirements that we're going to need here.
This is a very simplistic slide. The real slide would be on a massive screen with so much detail on it. It would be very busy.
Let's not do that slide.
No, let's not do it. But basically, what this is suggesting, that we can look at all applications together. We can take in all the infrastructure hypervisors, you know, the virtual environments, mobile data and remote offices, etc. And we can bring the protection of all of that together under a single management layer to a single set of backup softwares and hardwares.
Now, this is something that has been implicit in everything that we said, but we haven't talked about it explicitly so far. You'll say one single point of management for all of this.
Yes.
Now, previous slide, one of the things that people are complaining about is the practices of the vendors were not well aligned. And we talk about the fragmentation of management more or less every regcast now. But so this has to be something that people have to be concerned about if you're using a variety of backup and recovery technologies.
Yes.
Can we manage them together?
Yes, we're looking at putting that management layer together there, and the one in the triangle means we want one solution for this.
Because if there's two or three, it immediately breaks. Yeah.
So this isn't just vision. This is deliverable but ongoing improvements to make it. We're going towards that one. But what we're looking at doing is saying, okay, we know we've got all these applications, and we know customers have got lots of point solutions in there, you know, perhaps multiple ISVs, perhaps, you know, multiple hardwares and all the rest. But what we're attempting to do here is to say, okay, we can put a recovery framework in place where all of this can plug together. So you're going to drive it through a single console. And that means there will be automation between things like primary storage and the target storage. The target storage will be capable of deploying it as physical appliances, as virtual appliances, and even as backup agents that are compatible. In other words, they can all move the protected data around within a single sort of backup target.
So you specify which blob applies to which kind of data. If we go back to our blob chart, effectively.
Yes. So bringing all that together, basically.
Yeah, and then that takes care of that and make sure that there are no spaces where things.
Yes.
Get
Even
lost.
with gateways into the ISVs here, because we're going to give the customer a choice of where they're going to manage some of this. Okay. Now, at the moment, this is very orientated towards HP's hardware. So in other words, it'll unify HP's primary and backup storage, but not third party.
Yeah, that's going to be the thing. Everyone's got stuff already, and we can't do a rip and replace on it.
I agree, and that's why we've integrated with ISVs, because those will presumably be backing that stuff up now. The encouragement will be for customers to look at the more efficient methods we've got via our converged solutions.
But we have to start from where we are already. Yeah.
And that's obviously, as a vendor, we're trying to attract the customers more.
Talking of as a vendor, I'll let you show this, because you've worked, you know, see, you worked hard. What you're showing here is tiny stuff to very big stuff, yeah? We
are, yeah. So basically we're saying that you could be a tiny remote office that couldn't possibly justify its own backup appliance or single solution, but we could be running it in terms of a virtual machine on a server that's out there. And that would allow us to be able to back up that remote office and also to replicate it to another appliance somewhere else in the organisation, presumably at the data centre or DR location.
It doesn't have to just be a remote office either. It could also be a small business.
It could be.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The smallest businesses could use that. And then as we go up the scale, we're basically like every vendor, we're going from the small, medium, large type appliances. An interesting thing at the top end of our range there is that there's only so big you can build an appliance, okay, and if we look at our competitors, you can see where that limit is around about the 500 terabyte mark. Nobody seems to be able to build bigger than that, except for us. And the way we've overcome that is by using not just a scale-up architecture. That is where you just add more drive shelves. Yeah. Okay. There's a limit to how far you can go there. but we've got some scale out architecture, and that allows us to add new hardware to an appliance sort of side by side. So it's almost like building 4 appliances together as one, but they're managed in a singular fashion.
Right. Now we just got a couple of minutes until the end, so let's just have a look at some of these. Tony, could you pick something out here from where to start?
The single most important thing here is the whole data discovery and classification. So what data do you have? Is it being properly protected already, or do you have some gaps in there that need to be improved, need to be addressed?
Oh, you say start to make a classification of that.
So classify your data, whether it's in 3 layers, as Dave suggested, or more, whatever works for you, but actually do the discovery and the classification. There are now some tools that can help automate that, so it's not a completely manual task. Doing it manually would be a pain in the neck and impossible for most people. I was going to say, yeah. But then align that with what are your current capabilities that you've got, and where you've got some gaps, what would be the new options to do something? Because if you've identified that we've got some problems here, some things that need looking at, then that feeds into the whole business SLA requirements. Are we meeting them? According to our earlier charts, we know we're not. And then can we use that as a business trigger to actually invest? Either because the business knows we've got to do something and they can't say no to it, or maybe we can get some savings on doing what we're doing. We get some savings on the storage that we're actually using, or we're getting some additional value coming out of it. So actually, know what you've got, what you're doing, how you need to change, and that's the most difficult bit of all. But it's not something that you have to do, in one big bang. You can do that, over a period of days and weeks, and just get it there, get that knowledge first.
Yeah.
If you've got a plan together, look at trying to implement some of that plan at the time. For instance, you're buying new primary storage. Okay, it's a great time to say, look, I need to look at the protection of data stored in this, and it's a time when perhaps you can raise budget that way. Also, I think all equipment is aging, and there's a point where it makes sense to just replace it. Economic sense to replace it, but there could be a great technical advantage in that replacement as well. So there could be a double advantage in looking at some of the older equipment to say, one, I can replace this and save money, but I can replace it and make it super efficient and save even more money.
Isn't there the case, just to even get involved with this in the first place, though, you have to frighten the life out of your bosses?
That's the current capability. Do we have any gaps bit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got to find those business triggers to make people want to do something or know they have to do something, and that's where the knowledge comes in.
Now, is a business trigger on this in the changing work practices, because we've got far more people working at home and bring your own device type things now. Naturally, these generate data, but some of that never even gets into the organisation. The process of data discovery becomes far more complicated because there's a whole bunch of stuff that you don't even know exists.
Sure.
What do we do about this?
Well, I know it's not a personal problem because my laptop gets backed up every time I log in. So
lots of people's don't, though.
Lots of people's don't, and that's what we're saying is basically that should happen.
Yeah, I mean, just in our experience, it would be a problem if that were left to the individuals for certain. But it's an automated function, and it happens. So I would suggest definitely looking into that, because people don't do things. They're busy.
You've also got people spinning up virtual machines on cloud systems, maybe storing data on them because they're running them, expecting it for a short time. And of course, when marketing's doing this, and something happens to the cloud service, and they say, well, where's all our data gone? You didn't tell us about it, guys. How can we protect it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the IT manager in charge of backup. I don't have the status to be able to push people around in a data center.
But that's also ties into the last box on the chart
operational process modification.
Yeah, well, I had to get that in.
It all ties together.
You've got to make sure that the processes you're using now are fit for purpose, but more importantly, that the changing needs mean that you've accomplished that. You've got that covered in how you actually work, from the understanding all the way through to actually recovery point as well. And that involves a degree of testing that doesn't happen.
Okay, so last thing, Dave, out of our further reading here, what would you pick out? If someone wanted to go off and do something now, straight away now, where's good?
I'd say take the the option to look into the Get Protected guarantee from HP. You know, where you get a free.
This is the thing where
survey.
You come in and
basically it's going to do a survey of your data protection. You know, of what's deployed. I think it's when I've looked at customers that have gone, you know, received this service and they've read the report, it's helped them a lot.
Yeah, good guys. Well, we're more or less done, and that's it for the year. I mean, basically Christmas. Good. All right, let's do this. Let's get our Christmas twig on the table. Christmas starts here. Thanks very much for being with us this year, and let us know what you'd like to us do in 2015. From Tim Phillips and from the Reg, Happy Christmas.